Today is October 31, 2021. This is a Sunday edition of Wilderness Wanderings. It contains a scripture and sermon from our worship service at Emmanuel. You can find a link to the whole service on our website, emmanuelministries.ca. May God bless you as you hear His Word.
Please join me in praying for the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Most gracious and loving Father, we praise and bless you for the great salvation you have freely given us. We find great joy in the ongoing work of your Spirit. Restore our strength and joy so that we may bless and serve you. We ask you for your forgiveness, Lord. You are the Alpha and the Omega. Amen.
This morning we continue with our series on the book of Revelation. And this morning we are going to do a quite audacious thing. We're going to take up 3 chapters, chapters 12, 13, and 14. These 3 chapters belong together according to the commentaries and according to our chief shepherd through the book of Revelation, Eugene Peterson. And now you might think to yourself, that's a bit too much, and maybe it is. But our goal is that we learn to view the book of Revelation as a series of visions, as pictures. And so this morning I want to look at the forest as a whole. Because when we tend to look at the book of Revelation and read it, we tend to look at the individual trees, and I think often we even look at the individual branches or even the individual leaves that make up the forest, and then we miss the grand scheme and the grand message that the book has, because we get confused in all the details. And so we're going to sort of pull back from all of the details and attempt to look at the larger picture. And to do that, I want to begin with a story that maybe some of you have heard before, but it began in 1952. I know that's a long time ago. But that's when Mother Teresa began her work with the Missionaries of Charity in the city of Calcutta, where she and her fellow sisters found those who were dying in the streets, brought them into their home, and cared for them. In 1974, that's 22 years later, a U.S. senator by the name of Mark Hatfield was in Calcutta and decided that he needed to visit Mother Teresa. And so he visited the house, what is called the House of the Dying, where he saw sick children who were dying and being cared for by the sisters. He saw a small medical center where there was some medication and some staff, and there was a line about the door with hundreds of people who were lining up to get some care. And he watched the sisters and Mother Teresa caring for these people, feeding them, nursing them, helping them to die with dignity. He was overwhelmed, the senator, by the sheer magnitude of the suffering that Mother Teresa and her co-workers faced every day. And he finally said, "How can you bear the load without being crushed by it?" To which Mother Teresa replied, "My dear senator, I am not called to be successful. I am called to be faithful." It seems to me that the book of Revelation as a whole is intended, and it meets the church when they are overwhelmed with the forces of evil arrayed against us. And the revelation of St. John is there to encourage us to be faithful. And so today we want to look at these 3 chapters under that sort of framework, under that story, a call to be faithful. But that's not what I've given the title of this sermon. I have called it, Let's Talk Politics. I know that's a dangerous thing to talk politics, and to mix politics and religion is even more dangerous. But this chapter, it seems to me, is really about politics, these 3 chapters. They are about the politics of the world. But before we talk about the politics of the world, Let's recall in chapter 11 from last week, we have this song. The kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever. Does anybody dare tell me that that is not a political statement? No, I didn't think so. I mean, that's politics. I mean, the book of Revelation and throughout the scriptures, we read that from Isaiah 9, which we began the service with, that often read during Advent, that God comes with his kingdom. And he stands opposed to all kingdoms that are opposed to him. And his kingdom will be a kingdom forever. That's politics. God's kingdom is that of shalom. Jesus came and he said he had come to bring the kingdom. The kingdom of God is at hand. And he displayed that the kingdom was a kingdom of shalom, where the sick were healed and the dead are raised and the lame are able to leap with joy. The deaf can hear. And the good news is preached to the poor. And so after the service, you're going to walk out that door and you're going to walk into the Kingdom of Canada and you're going to meet people who don't have a place to live. And you're going to meet people who don't know where their next meal is going to come from. And some of those of you who are listening here are ill. And you don't anticipate that you're going to get better on this side of the grave. And we are faced with evil. How do we live? The world, when it faces evil, when it faces anything, its politics are always about power. And I'm going to be extremely simplistic here. But there are basically two kinds of kingdoms in this world. There is a dictatorship, where the guy at the top or the girl at the top has all the power, and you either follow or you die. Right? We know those kingdoms. They're all the way around the world. And then there are the kingdoms that are more, for lack of a better word, democracies, where we're not allowed to kill each other. But we spin with words. And we convince everybody that our agenda is the right one, and everybody should follow us. And we bully and coerce people into believing those things. And, well, here's the thing, my friends, is that Christians tend to do the same thing. We tend to be bullies. Most of the great leaders that have been defrocked in the past couple of decades were defrocked because, well, they were bullies. We've talked about that here before, and so I won't go into that. We use threats and coercion. We puff ourselves up. We tell stories about ourselves that magnify our own importance, that make us sound more holy than we really are. After all, who wants an unholy preacher? Hey, you're allowed to laugh a little bit. Thank you. When I was in seminary, there were a few things I remember from those days, not a whole lot. But there's one thing I remember. And that is one of the professors who said to us as we were leaving, watch out for those parishioners who want to be your friends. Because they usually have an ulterior motive. Watch out for those who want to be your friends. Because they have an ulterior motive. They want to be your friend to use you. To move you into their agenda. I haven't encountered very many of those people in my lifetime, my ministry, I'm glad to say. But I do understand there's some truth to that. Christians are called to a different kind of politics. When the devil offered Jesus the kingdoms of the world, he refused. When his disciples wanted to call down fire on their enemies, he said, don't. When Peter pulled out his sword to defend Jesus, Peter said, put it away. When he was face to face with Pilate, and Pilate wondered if his job was on the line, if Jesus wanted his political power, Jesus said, not at all. The Bible describes Jesus' coronation by crucifixion. he ascended the hill of the cross. Christian politics is very different, at least it's supposed to be different, than the world. All right, sorry, but something just happened here. I need my notes back. So there are a number of dangers that we can face as we live in politics in the world. And the one is that we can ditch Jesus' donkey and hire a media consultant. I mean, you know the churches that have these great media campaigns that impress everybody with the slickness of their ministry, of what happens on Sundays, and they draw attention to themselves. Or we can also, there is a danger of becoming a Christian fellowship that closes all the doors, and only those who manage to squeeze into the doors do we care about. But basically we wash our hands of the world and say, it's going to hell in a handbasket, so we're just going to sit here and pray until Jesus comes back. But Jesus would have us, and John would have us not take either of those. I think Jesus and John would have us follow the words of Mother Teresa when she said, "My dear Senator, I am not called to be successful, but when I am called, be faithful." How do we be faithful in this kind of world where there is so much evil arrayed against us? For that, let's turn to Revelation chapter 12. Would you stand as we read Scripture together? A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. Imagine this, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so it might devour her child the moment he was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God into his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters who accuses them before our God day and night has been hurled down. They triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short." When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time out of the serpent's reach. And from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with the torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. And the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commands and hold fast their testimony about Jesus. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. So where does John start his political story and his encouragement for us to be faithful? Well, he begins with Christmas, with the Nativity, a story that hides in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, a story that says that Christmas is not about carols and hot chocolate, but it's about war. Think about Herod and Judas Pilate. There's a woman dressed like the sun, with the sun, standing on the moon with a crown of 12 stars on her head, magnificent and beautiful, and she is with child. The songs of heaven, the choruses of God's rule give way to the travail of a woman in labor. And then there is another sign, a dragon, fiery red. With its tail, it sweeps a third of the stars out of the sky. It's huge. It's as ugly and demonic as the woman is beautiful. And it's got 7 heads. And he's slobbering at the mouth, wanting to devour this child. And the moment we see this, we go, what chance does this child have? But the moment we ask the question, John answers it for us, and he says the child has every chance. And he quotes from Psalm 2. He said to me, this is God, you are my son. Today I become your father. Ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like a pottery. That's what John quotes. But around that, there is the image of God in Psalm 2. And what is God doing in Psalm 2? Does anybody know? God's laughing. He's laughing in derision at all those who stand opposed to him. And he says to them, what chance do you have? You have none. So kiss my son before it's too late. This babe that is born, John wants us to know that this child has the very protection of God himself. And so he is snatched up to heaven. And our response should be, of course he is. Because this child is in God's hands. Across the heavens, Michael and his angels, Michael the archangel, does battle with the dragon and his angels. And as soon as the battle begins, it's done. And the dragon and his hosts are defeated. And the image in the Greek is that Michael sort of grabs this dragon by the scuff of his neck and sort of drops him off like a pile of dirty laundry onto the earth. And the image that we are supposed to have, even though this dragon is terrifying to look at, his power is extremely limited. And this dragon now is angry because he's been dropped down to the earth. And as the song says, he knows that his time is short. His days are numbered. And so having been defeated, not being able to eat the child, not being able to defeat Michael and his angels, he goes off after the woman who gave birth. But she is protected by both heaven and earth, and he can't reach her. What image are we supposed to have of this dragon? This dragon's useless. This dragon can't accomplish his purposes. There's too much arrayed against him. He may look terrible, but he's a puffed up buffoon. He goes after the other children of the woman. Those who believe in Jesus. Those who keep God's commands, which are to love the Lord your God and your neighbor as yourself. And those who keep testimony. As Pastor Anthony said last week, it simply means that we say, I believe in Jesus. And that's us. Those who belong to the church, who call themselves Christians. And we read this story and go, oh no, we're in trouble. No. See, John is telling the story of this dragon who's been defeated 3 times already. He's been thwarted. He can't accomplish what he wants because God is against him and God laughs. God says, you can't get it done because you're opposing me and my Christ. You're finished. And so John gives us this image of this dragon, thrice defeated. And we hear Mother Teresa, my dear senator, I am not called to be successful. I am called to be faithful. There may be evil arrayed against us. The nations of the world may be against the church. Evil may still have power right now, but its days are numbered. And we are called to be faithful, to stay the course, to love God and our neighbor. The dragon is portrayed by John as a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. We are not meant to be frightened. On guard, yes, but not frightened. All right, from there we go to chapter 13. Let's stand as we read together this chapter. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. And it had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns. On each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?" Remember Psalm 2, and God laughs. That's our answer to that question. The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise its authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All the inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the book of Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. Whoever has ears, let him hear. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will go. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast whose fatal wound had been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in the honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands and on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. So here we have 2 beasts, and one is representative of political machines of the world, empires that come and go, and that produce all kinds of evil that are arrayed against the church. The second is false worship. It draws people away to worship the beast and the dragon. And the beasts are, well, again, they are scary. But once again, as we look at those beasts and we become afraid, John calls our attention. And he represents this first beast with an image from Daniel 7. In Daniel 7, there are 4 beasts. And this beast in Revelation has a little bit of each of them. And those 4 beasts in Daniel chapter 7 are different empires that will be on the earth for a while, and then they will defeat each other, and in the end, Christ will come and defeat them all. But in the middle of that chapter, of which we are reminded by the vision of this beast, there is this: God sits in his court, and he says, but the court will sit and his power will be taken away, that is the power of the beast, and completely destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. These 2 beasts represent the ways of the world, a people arrayed against a church filled with evil, of kingdoms, human systems. They could be dictatorships. They could also be democracies, different kinds of government that array themselves against the work of God. perpetrating evil. They are religious systems. And sometimes these are combined, right? Some of these dictatorships become religious, and people worship their government. We've seen that. We know that kind of stuff. And we may be afraid of that. But as John gives his vision of these beasts, he reminds us of Daniel 7 where this is written. And when we face the evils of this world, he says, don't be afraid. Remember the song of heaven, that the dragon knows that his time is short. We may face much. We may even lose our lives. And that can be difficult to face. But for God's people, death is not defeat. Death is not the end. It is only the beginning. And so, even though it sounds awfully frightening, John would have us calm our nerves and hear the encouragement that he gives, that this calls for faithfulness. I am not called to be successful, but to be faithful, to stay the course, loving God and your neighbor. Now, there is this business of the 666, and let's just take a moment to make an effort to unravel that, because it gets us all tied up in the knots. Any of it sound kind of familiar to you? Any of you remember this? This is the Shema of Israel, Deuteronomy 6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord, our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. And to that was added then the second commandment, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The Israelites were commanded to write these words on little scrolls. And they were to tie these scrolls to their foreheads and on their hands. To remember their God. To know what was what. And to remember what their hands were to do. To lift them up in praise to God in worship. And to love their neighbor as themselves. 666. What's the perfect number in the Bible? 7, right? So 666 falls just short. It's not perfect. It's the number of man, not God. In Revelation, there's always this contrast between those who follow the dragon and those who follow the risen Savior. Those who are marked by the beast and those who are marked by the Lamb that was slain. And sometimes preachers use this division to scare their people and to say, which group are you in? But that's not John's point. John's encouragement is that if you are marked with the Lamb, then you are marked with the Lamb, and there's nothing that can be done about that. You cannot be deceived because you are sealed with the Spirit. We are not meant to be afraid of this. Rather, we are to remember the words of Psalm 2. The Lord laughs. The days of the beast are numbered. The days of evil are numbered. Their time is short. They are nothing more than puffed up buffoons. Oh, take them seriously, of course, but do not be afraid. What is our only comfort in life and in death? That I belong, say it with me, that I belong to my faithful Savior, Jesus Christ. That's what Revelation is about. That belonging, that safety, that comfort. It cannot be taken away from us. Let's carry on to Revelation 14. We just stand for this final chapter. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. They are sealed. They belong to Christ. And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and like a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who have been redeemed from the earth. We know those songs. These are those who did not defile themselves with women, for they remain virgins. They followed the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among mankind and offered as firstfruits to God and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouths. They are blameless. Then I saw another angel flying in midair, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. Okay, just hold it. Don't put that slide back. Okay, this is where our sort of divisions of the Bible sometimes cause us trouble. There is a division between verse 5 and 6. All right, and I will explain that in a minute. All right, let's go to verse 7. He said in a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water." A second angel followed and said, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries." A third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image and receives this mark on their forehead or on their hand, they too will drink the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. They will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. There will be no rest, day or night, for those who worship the beast and its image, or for anyone who receives the mark of its name." This calls for patient endurance on the part of God's people who keep his commands and remain faithful to Jesus. Are you catching it? All right, this is the third part of the chapter. Then I heard a voice from heaven say, "Write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes," says the Spirit, "they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them." I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he who was seated on the cloud swung a sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel who had charge of the fire came from the altar and called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, "Take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the earth's vines, because its grapes are ripe." The angel swung a sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising on high as a horse's bridles, for a distance of 1,600 stadia. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. This chapter gives us 3 practices by which to do politics in the world. And the first practice is that of worship. We see here a new song that's being sung in heaven, that is sung by those who have been redeemed by the Lamb. The first thing that we do as political creatures in this world is to worship God. That's why the church has gathered on the first day of the week since the beginning, to worship the resurrected Lord, to worship our Lord Jesus Christ, and to declare that he is King. To say in defiance of all the empires of the world, our God reigns. We can do a lot of things in worship, but that note is one that must sound, and it must be heard. We gather to remember the way things really are. There is much evil in this world, but evil's time is short. Our God rules. The second thing that we do is preach. Well, I think I have this on overhead so you can watch. There you go. The second thing is preaching. The second part, the middle part of that chapter, is angels preaching. And they are declaring that God has won, that the Lamb is victorious. They are declaring that God wins. which, if you want to summarize the book of Revelation in 2 words, you got it right there. God wins. And the beasts are doomed. There's a lot of noise in the world. And that noise has a tendency to drown out preaching. And so the church calls each other to come and to hear. Not a new story, but the old story of God's love for us in Christ. To remember that we belong. We belong first and foremost to the Lamb. So that when we go out into the world and we face the evils that are there, we can be faithful because we know to whom we belong. And he holds us in his hands and he will not let us go. The church is to declare the old story. And the third thing is holy living. There is a scene of judgment. I think it's a rift on Jesus' parables of separating the goats and the sheep, of the weeds from the wheat. That Jesus says in the end they will be harvested together and they will be separated by the servants of God. I think that's what John is riffing on in this last part of the chapter. And there is this strange thing that we preachers don't want to preach on, but that our good deeds, for some reason, follow us into eternal life. That's what the Spirit says. Their good deeds, blessed are those who die in the Lord, for their good deeds will follow them. Look it up. It's in Revelation 14. We are called to faithfulness of holy living, to love God and our neighbor. Evil, powerful. It's strong, but it grows weak in the face of love. The church has discovered this throughout the centuries. That when Christians follow the advice of the Apostle Paul when he says, love your enemies. And as Jesus said, do good to those who hate you. Hatred begins to crumble, for it can't stand. It doesn't know what to do with love. John would have us not be successful in a political way as the world knows it. John would have us be faithful. My dear Senator, said Mother Teresa, I am not called to be successful. I am called to be faithful. That's John's word to us. Revelation 12, 13, and 14. Amen. I invite musicians to come and lead us in song. And as the music begins, I invite you to stand. Thanks for listening in. I hope you'll join us again tomorrow as we continue our daily devotions and our wilderness wanderings. As you journey on into the week ahead, go with the blessing of God. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.